Hey everyone, Beano Nintendo here. You're not going to be looking at a blank blue screen for very long, but I'm trying out a new format inspired by shows like Smarty Pants on Dropout, as well as Electric Wind Girlfriend's competitive Pokemon PowerPoints. So using Google Slides for this one. Let's go! Lately, there has been a trend. It started kind of with Shafrillus's video about which Smash characters have eaten pizza, but it's kind of expanded in different ways. Who's had a horror game, who's had sex, who's died. It's not pictured here, but there's even one about who's said the N-word. But they're all missing something. What about me? What do I gain from any of this knowledge? How is this actually helpful to me? You know what I could use right now? I could use a date. So surely someone on this roster would make for a suitable partner, right? This is Most Eligible Smashler, going through the entire Smash Bros. Roster to see who would be worthy of a date. But this roster is pretty huge, so if I made a slide for every single character, that would just take forever. So I'm going to have to try and pare things down. Starting with the Mii Fighters, I mean, they can be literally anyone. There's way too many variables with them. I just don't want to mess with them. So they're out. Who else? Well, consent is the number one rule. So in order to consent, a character must be shown as capable of communicating in a recognized human language. So English, Japanese, even something like English Sign Language would work for this. Assuming that there is a person out there that speaks that language, you'd be able to communicate. And then they must be at least 18 years old. So the first stipulation really only removes a bunch of Pokemon and retro characters. But the second one is a little bit more varied and has a few surprises, not only in who is included, like I didn't know that Roy was 15 years old, but also in who isn't included. And we'll get into some of those now. We have edge cases. So in pretty much all media, Yoshi is seen as only saying his name. But there have been instances where he speaks full English, like in the Super Mario World cartoon.
Tell how Luigi finds Yoshi and Yoshi rescue Princess.
Okay.
Likewise,
the piranha plants don't usually talk, but they do sing in Japanese for a commercial for Super Mario RPG.
Playing a game, okay.
And then Kirby, I could have put him as an edge case for either, really, because he is like a 200-year-old creature that has the mind of a baby. But as far as speaking goes, he can only really talk if he's mimicking another character. Then, for stipulation number 2, we have Link, who in Breath of the Wild is 117, but he was sleeping for 100 of those years, so really he's just 17. Then we have Pit, who mentions several times throughout the game, referencing like 25 years ago we did this. But he also says that he's 13 in Angel years, so probably not worth messing around with. Then we have Sheik, who is an alter ego for Zelda. In Smash, she's actually based off the Sheikah armor from Breath of the Wild, but the only canon appearance that she has in the Zelda series is in Ocarina of Time, where she is an alter ego for a 16-year-old woman, girl, whatever. Speaking of Zelda, the Zelda in Smash is based on her Link to the Past incarnation, who is canonically 16, but it's also kind of based on her Link Between Worlds incarnation, which we don't know the age of. Then we have Pokemon Trainer, which is a generic term used in the Pokemon world for basically anyone that owns a Pokemon. However, this particular Pokemon trainer is based on the protagonist of Fire Red and Leaf Green, who is 10 years old. Then similar situation with Inkling, it refers to an entire species, but the ones that you play as are usually in their early teens. Dark Pit and Dark Samus might look older, but they're very recently created clones, so they're probably not even a year old. Then we have Robin, who is a create a character in Fire Emblem Awakening, so he's got 3 different body types with 3 different associated ages, and 2 out of 3 of them are lower than we would like. So, and speaking of Fire Emblem Awakening, we have Lucina, who is somehow only 10 years old because they fucked up the timeline. She definitely is intended to be much older, but yeah, the timeline doesn't really make sense unless she's a 10-year-old, so go figure. All right, so for our purposes, let's say that none of the edge cases can give consent. This is what the roster would look like with them cut. So that's 51 options. We've cut things basically in half, but we can certainly cut down more. I think that 18 is too low of an age here. I would like to at least be able to grab drinks with whoever I'm dating, so I'm going to cut everyone under 21 from the roster too. And surprisingly, that is the entire Star Fox crew gone in one fell swoop, and most of the Fire Emblem characters too. So sorry, weebs and furries. Next, you want to consider your reputation. Whether we like it or not, who you're dating is going to affect how people see you. So it's probably a good idea not to date any of the characters deemed as villains, even if some of them have reformed or were never really that bad to begin with. But even a lot of the non-villain characters have done some pretty bad stuff, like both Mario and Donkey Kong are guilty of kidnapping. Mario kidnapped Donkey Kong Sr., aka Cranky Kong, in the Donkey Kong Jr. arcade game. But then later, our Donkey Kong the Third, who is playable in Smash, kidnapped Pauline in Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis. Then we have incest, because Fire Emblem Fates is a weird game, and most of Corrin's romance options are adoptive or blood relatives. You know, that's pleasant. And then owning a private island. Technically not a crime in and of itself, but it is pretty suspect given that Villager and Isabelle have both held positions of political power just before getting that island. Next, we have grooming. Byleth, Pyra, and Mithra all take interest in their future spouses when they're still minors. Solid Snake is guilty of several war crimes. Most people count Mario and Dr. Mario together for these sorts of videos, and I would normally do the same, but Dr. Mario is worth highlighting for the mobile game Dr. Mario World, where not only are medical licenses given out to all of his friends, which is suspicious enough all on its own, but also to a stack of Goombas, a literal dolphin, and a bunch of babies. So yeah, I'm gonna remove every Mario character from the roster because this is just, like, there's no way that this is a legit operation. Next we have Ryu and Ken. They both absorbed Akuma's evil aura and created evil Ryu and violent Ken. They knew that doing this would have consequences. Both of those characters went off and killed a bunch of people. So yeah, that's not great. And then in Metroid 2, Samus, and by extension Zero Suit Samus, are asked to wipe out the entire Metroid population, and they just go along with it.
The side is typically frowned upon, and yet Samus disagrees.
And Cloud Strife here is guilty of domestic abuse, murder, and giving an entire planet cancer. Honestly, I was considering making Cloud a finalist for this list because I didn't know that much about him, but wow, he's kind of a monster, isn't he?
Genova would become anyone to fool her prey. But I'm no fool.
Then we have Bayonetta, who gets her own slide, not because she has committed any crimes that I know of or is considered evil, but I also have to consider taking her home to my parents. She is a bisexual dominatrix witch with a potty mouth who always carries guns on her, wears clothing made out of her own hair, and summons demons to kill angels. That might be really hot, but you're not going to be able to bring her home for Thanksgiving. I cannot have her on this list. So here's how we're looking now. Only 11 fighters left. That's almost single digits. And speaking of single things, most people are monogamous, and that probably applies to the Smash roster too. I mean, personally, I wouldn't mind a poly thing, but I also want to keep in mind not just who's best to date for me, but who's best to date for you. And, you know, statistically, you are probably monogamous. So let's go through and eliminate everyone currently in a relationship. All right, so everyone knows that Pac-Man is married to Ms. Pac-Man, but what you might not know is that due to licensing issues, Ms. Pac-Man has been retconned to Pac-Mom for newer releases. Then we have Captain Olimar, who has a wife and kids waiting for him back home. They haven't really put a label on it, but Terry and Blue Mary from the Fatal Fury series have been mutually interested in each other for a long time.
Yo, Mari. 今回もやっぱ仕事できてんのか? それともプライベート?
ご推察通り仕事よ仕事。でも今から少しの間だけはプライベートになるけどね。テリー。
So we know that Simon Belmont has plenty of descendants. We know that he married at one point, but we don't know specifically who he married. It's unclear whether or not the Ice Climbers are dating or if they're related to each other, but that ambiguity in and of itself I think is enough reason not to put them on the list. And similarly, there might be a relationship between Captain Falcon and Jodie Summer. F-Zero X hints at this. But then the F-Zero anime, which admittedly is a different timeline, says that they're siblings. So that's not great. That's all of the relationships I knew of. So now we've narrowed the list down and we're on to our top 5, starting with
Banjo and Kazooie!
So the pros for these guys is that you'll be able to go on wacky cartoon adventures with them and you'll meet a colorful cast of characters. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be like a real-life Saturday morning cartoon. They're also into video games and pizza, so you'll get to have a fair share of chill nights with them too. And then if you don't really like the way that they look, or you just want to like experiment with different options, or you just need to get your laundry done, their pal Mumbo Jumbo can transform them into other animals or into a sentient washing machine. So you can really mix things up that way. But they do have some pretty bad cons, like Banjo's not super smart and Kazooie is really mean. She always wants to start drama, probably not a good person to bring your friends around. If you only want to date one of them, you can't really avoid the other since they are roommates and best friends. Like, they're just, the other one's always just going to be there and they're going to talk about you with each other and it's going to be pretty messy. And then they're not the only non-human characters in the top 5, but they are the most similar to real-world animals, and it would be pretty weird to show up to a couples event with a bear and a bird as your partner. Okay, so on the topic of non-humans,
Lucario!
They can be male or female to suit your preference. They are a total empath who can read the aura of the beings around them to understand exactly how they're feeling. They are a trained martial artist with a strong sense of justice, so they can keep you safe both physically and emotionally. And they're very loyal. There is basically zero risk of them ever cheating on you. Now, you might be looking at this and say, oh, well, 4 pros and 2 cons, that's pretty good. I don't know why Lucario is number 4. These cons are pretty bad. First of all, the spikes are not retractable. They are made of metal. That is an accident waiting to happen. If you hug this guy, you are getting impaled. And then they also speak telepathically, so just because you can hear them doesn't mean that your friends can. And from their perspective, they're just gonna see this guy as a weird manly dog. Again, not a great look. Next we have
We Fit Trainer.
They, again, can be male or female to suit your personal preference. They live a healthy and active lifestyle and will help you to improve your own health, too. And between their flexibility, stamina, and knowledge of different, like, yoga poses and stuff, they're just going to be great in the sack. Like, you're going to have a great time with them no matter what. Even if you end up breaking up, you're going to carry that knowledge with you to future relationships, and you're going to be better at sex. These are just the facts. However, they have some pretty major cons. They're going to actively shame you if you don't want to live their lifestyle. They're going to call you lazy and complain about your more passive interests like video games or board games or Twitch streaming or whatever. Even if you do try to improve your health, they're not body positive at all, and they're going to keep calling you obese until you're down to the average BMI.
That's obese.
And then, finally, they're just kind of creepy. Like, imagine waking up and seeing those blank, soulless eyes staring back at you from the other side of the bed. Like, that's some horror movie shit. On the opposite side of the spectrum, someone that I would be very pleased to wake up next to.
Halutena.
She is a literal goddess who grants you cool powers like super speed, flight, and the ability to shoot giant lasers. She is a kind and benevolent figure who wants what's best for all of humanity. And she is intelligent, flirtatious, and curvaceous. I mean, just look at how they revealed her as a character in Smash for Wii U and 3DS. But she does have some cons, like the fact that she is a goddess as well as the leader of the Centurion army comes with a lot of baggage. You know, just imagine someone else literally worshiping your girlfriend. That can get really toxic. And imagine, you know, your girlfriend being able to summon an army of angels and use those against you, and using her influence as a goddess against you, and using her physical might against you. Like, nothing's stopping her from lasering you. So if you get on her bad side, that could really ruin your life. She's also a terrible cook. The last time she prepared vegetables, they started attacking people. And then she talks a lot about her 13-year-old intern, and, like, it's probably nothing, but, like, she keeps mentioning how funny and charming he is, and that's kind of concerning. This next character's never done anything like that, and that's why they're the number one choice. At this point, you've been paying attention. You know who it is. We have
Steve. Alex.
Not including Zombie or Enderman on this, for what I hope are fairly obvious reasons. The pros for these guys, I mean, again, the male or female thing, you know, whatever you're into there. Also a variety of different races, you know, if you have preferences for that. But the bigger things are that they are true survivalists. You can throw them in any environment and they're going to thrive. Throw them in the woods, they'll come back with full diamond armor and, like, lauded as a dragon slayer. Like, these guys don't only survive in new environments, they thrive. But also, they can build basically whatever you want very quickly, very cheap, and without the need of extra materials like screws or nails. They can build you an entire mansion, and you don't have to pay for it. They can just do that in an afternoon, and they can fix basically anything super quickly too. Like, they are the handiest characters on this whole roster to have around. They do have a few cons. The jagged edges might be an issue for intimacy. I've seen some animations where it doesn't appear to be an issue, but that's conjecture on fans' parts. If they're as good at mining the Earth as they are mining the Minecraft world, they could kill the planet very quickly. Fortunately, they're always depicted as kind-hearted in basically all external media, so I don't think they do that, but just know the potential is definitely there. And then finally, personally, I think the Palutena is hotter. So that's it. Those are the most dateable Smash characters. And if you disagree with my choices, definitely let me know why. And if you disagree with how I determined who does and doesn't qualify for the top 5, well, you can take it up with certain people, like Reddit user JCRV, who made a list of Smash characters by canonical age, and Huntin' for the Bug, also on Reddit, for his Smash relationship tier list. Or Danny Gamer Thorist for pointing out all of Snake's war crimes. I do feel like, aside from the war crimes and the whole rapidly aging thing, and the smoking thing, okay, I'm convincing myself less on Snake as I go. But he is, like, very well cultured and smart and handsome, so, like, you know, that's he is kind of a catch in the grand scheme of things. But I also want to give thanks to the F-Zero Wiki, Castlevania Wiki, Banjo-Kazooie Wiki, SNK Wiki, Mario Wiki, and Bulbapedia and Divinopedia. They were a huge help in coming up with certain information, verifying certain things. I also want to thank my friend Caleb, who, through his knowledge of Final Fantasy, Street Fighter, and Banjo-Kazooie, he helped me to narrow down the top 5. And finally, I want to thank my Patreons, Michael Bernabo and Jonathan Forsher. I'm kind of financially struggling right now. I could really use money. So, if you liked this video and want to see more of them, please consider liking, subscribing, and supporting me on Patreon. You can do so for as little as $1 a month, and you get neat perks like early video access, your name in the credits, behind-the-scene blog posts, and more. So definitely consider supporting. And with that, my cat has knocked over my mouse again, and this is Beano Nintendo signing off.